Hey, let's talk about the basic version of Let It Ride. So what I have up here is the basic structure of my program to begin with. I have public class, basic Let It Ride defined, and then the beginning of my file and the end of my file. And then public static void main, string square bracket r, so I have a string array of arguments, which we can ignore for now. And then open curly, close curly. Here's my main method. So I'm ready to go. But the first thing I'm going to do before I talk about any code is think about what am I trying to accomplish in the game. So the basic version of Let It Ride is this. I think of a number, the computer thinks of a number, and if my number is lower, I win. If their number is lower, they win. But it's supposed to be random. And also, if I match the computer's number, I get bonus points. So double the points that I would have gotten otherwise. Now, I'm going to start with the main method and try to write as little as possible to get going. I don't want to get into all the weeds yet. I just want to think about the big picture. So really what it sounds like is I'm just going to keep playing rounds until I lose. Well, as I said that, play rounds until I lose, there's a word in there that screams a conditional statement. Until in English almost always means while in Java. While I haven't lost, play around. Play around until I've lost. Basically the same sentence. So try to train yourself to work towards that word until when it's appropriate, and then think, okay, that's a while loop. So I'm going to put my while loop right in my main and say, while I have not lost, play around. Now, that's the whole program, basically. Certainly, I got to work in details, but I've already put in a conditional statement that's going to help navigate this program. I've also realized that there's at least two things I still need a little extra work defining. Play around, that's a method I got to define, and lost, that's a variable I need to define. Now, I have two choices with defining this variable. I can either define it locally, or I can define it globally. There's pros and cons of each. If I define it globally, meaning at this level, so this would be a global defined method. All right, global is a comment up here. Every single method in my program can see it. Every single method in my program can change it. Now that's good and bad. It means I don't need to pass it around as a parameter, but it also means that it can change anywhere at any time. So I have to be very careful how I manage my global variables. If I define it as a local variable, so local to the main method, right here, so this is local, the scope is only in the main method. Now, that means I can only refer to it in the main method. If I need to get it into another method to, for example, play around, I'd have to pass it as a parameter. If play around was going to affect it, I'd have to return it from that method. So, I'm going to put myself into a difficult position because as soon as I determine where I'm going to put it, it makes other design decisions for me. Rather than argue the pros and cons of each, let's just define it locally for now. So I'm going to put it right here. Boolean lost equals false, because I haven't lost before I started. Now, by setting it to be false, I've got into this while loop. That's guaranteed. Now, the other thing I'm worried about is getting out of the while loop. I don't want to end up with an infinite loop. So if my condition is lost, I have to be able to change it within the while loop code. So that means that the only thing I do in here is play around better change lost. And since I defined it locally and not globally, the only way play around is going to be able to change it is if I change it locally. So that means I got to change it here. Lost equals the result of playing around. Now I've put a design constraint on myself. Play around has to return the new value of lost, whether I won or lost. So this looks pretty good. Lost is defined. Now let's go define play around. So this method is going to start a new code block here. Public, static. Those are going to tell me whether it's public or private, whether it's instance side or non-instance side. And then my next is return type. Well, since I said it's got to set lost, my return type has got to be Boolean. It just has to be. Now my name, play around. All right, and then my code. So what is it that play around is supposed to do? Well, I need to generate a number for me, I need to generate a number for the computer, and then I need to check to see whether or not I won or if I lost and if I get a bonus. So I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm going to assume that we can generate random numbers on our own. So let's do two number creations here. I'm going to create an int called cnum for the computer. And I'm just going to make that equal to math.random. We're going to have to cast it, so let me shift this over a little bit. I'm going to cast to an int the result of math.random. And then I think we have to go to 10, so times 10. Now I got to ask myself, is that going to get me where I want to be? Math.random gives me a number 0 to 0.9999999. If I multiply by 10, I'm going to get 0 to 9.9999999. Now, if I cast it to an int, ints just get rounded down, they truncate. So that means if I have up to 9.9999999 and I truncate, the highest number I can get is 9. So I can get the numbers 0 through 9. Well, if I want to randomly create 0 through 9, that's fine. If I want to randomly create 1 through 10, that's not fine. So in looking back at the specs for the program, it actually says the computer wants to randomly generate 0 to 10 inclusive, meaning include 0 and 10. So actually, multiplying by 10 only gives me 10 options. If I want to go 0 to 10, I actually need 11 options. So now, instead of going to 9.99999, I'm going to go to 10.99999. And when I truncate, I go down to 10. 0 times math.random is still 0, so I should be good. For the player number, we're going to let the person choose that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of put a squiggly line and say, you're going to need to find a way to get that input from the user that gets a number from them and probably verifies that it's that 1 to 10 range inclusive that they're supposed to guess. Well, now I have a few possibilities. Either I won, I lost, or I got the bonus. So let's check for one of the easiest ones first. Let's see if I lost. Now, I lose if my number, I got to check the rules again. If the player is less than the computer, the player wins. So if the computer is less than me, it wins. Well, this is pretty easy. If the computer number is less than the player number, I lost. And if I lost, what should I do? Well, I got to return something. I should return true. It means I lost. Return true. Now, otherwise, I'll do it otherwise if. Otherwise, if P number is less than C number, that means I won, and my score goes up by, I think, 5 points, or maybe the difference. Let's see. The player is less than the computer. The player gets a point for each number he played. So I get a number, whatever number I guessed. If I guessed a 5, I get 5 points. If I guessed a 7, I get 7 points. So that means I have something like a score plus equals player num. Now there's a third condition. So I'm just going to write else here. If I have an else, that's anything that didn't get accounted for. So if I wasn't greater than the computer number, and if I wasn't smaller than the computer number, I must have equaled the computer number. And if I equal the computer number, I get a bonus. 2 times my score. So otherwise, score plus equals 2 times the player number. Now either way, after I update my score, I'm going to just put a return false down here. Because remember, this is a Boolean method. It's got to return a Boolean. So if I lost, I stop. I don't check anything else. Otherwise, I return false because I didn't lose. Now you might notice in here, I have this thing called score that I've been changing. And I don't have it defined anywhere. Now, I assume score might be something I use in different places in my program. And the fact that I was changing it there tells me I might have to change it throughout my program. So that makes me think maybe score is a good global variable. So I'm going to go back up here where I identify the place for global variables before and give myself a public static int called score. And then at the beginning of my main method, the first thing I'm going to do is say score equals 0 to give it a default value. And just be explicit about that. It'll actually get a default value anyway. Right now, I have my condition set to false. I have my loop built. It says keep going until I play the round, and then I finish. And then my play round method generates my two numbers, although I said you'll have to fill that in. It checks to see if I lost, checks to see if I won, checks to see if I get a bonus. I think I've made all the things of the basic version. So hopefully this helped you see how these things come together to make a program that lets it ride. Bye now.